I'm Isabel Morales, but most people who knew me before just called me Izzy. And back then, they didn't say it kindly. I didn't grow up with much, not money, not attention, and definitely not approval. My parents weren't cruel in the way that makes headlines. They were quieter about it. Subtle, steady, strategic. My father, a retired Marine turned auto mechanic, believed in grit silence and the virtue of suffering. He drank his coffee black, worked with his hands, and looked at emotions like they were stains that needed scrubbing. My mother, a hairdresser who never finished high school, echoed his gospel. You gotta be useful, mija. Otherwise, you're just taking up space. That's how I grew up, taught to be invisible unless I was fixing something, earning something, or staying out of someone's way. We lived in a tiny duplex in South Bronx, where the sound of sirens was white noise and ambition was either mocked or mistaken for delusion. I learned early that dreams made people uncomfortable. The first time I told my dad I wanted to be an engineer, he laughed and handed me a wrench. Fix the damn sink first, Elon. I was 14. That sort of love, the practical, conditional kind, follows you. It eats at the softest parts of you until you armor up. And I did. I wasn't the smartest in my class, not by a long shot. But I worked like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. I bagged groceries, took double APs, and learned how to code on borrowed library computers. And when the letter came full scholarship to Columbia, I cried so hard in the stairwell I gave myself a nosebleed. My parents. They didn't come to orientation. You're just going to come back home when it gets too hard, my mom said. Folding laundry, you'll see. But I didn't come back. I survived on ramen and pride. I interned at a dead-end logistics company just to make rent. Slept on a mattress on the floor of a 4-girl apartment that smelled like burnt popcorn and ambition. And when I graduated with honors, I didn't even tell my parents. What was the point? Their response was always the same. That's cute. But real life starts now. So I started. My first job was at a small aviation startup in Austin, Etherline. I wasn't even hired as a developer. I was the admin assistant, which meant coffee runs calendar invites and trying not to cry when some junior engineer asked if I knew how to restart the Wi-Fi. My dad found out through my uncle and called me the next day. You went to Columbia to become a secretary? He said, voice laced with disgust. Guess that degree's working overtime. But what he didn't know, what I didn't tell anyone, was that Etherline wasn't just some boutique airplane business. It was working on an all-electric charter jet fleet. Green aviation. Fully app-integrated, customizable, frictionless travel. Think NetJets meets Tesla meets Uber Black. And from day one, I saw the cracks in their system. Their back-end architecture was a mess. Their scheduling algorithm was inefficient. I stayed late every night rewriting code, building alternate flowcharts until one Friday I stayed past midnight to finish an optimization module and accidentally deployed it live. Monday morning, the CTO called me in. I thought I was getting fired. Instead, she asked if I wanted to build out my prototype. But I'm just admin, I said. Blinking. Not anymore, she said, tossing me a badge with DevOps in bold. Her name was Janet Kim, a Korean-American software veteran who built her first company at 22 and sold it for 8 figures. She became my unofficial mentor, part bulldozer, part therapist. She taught me to play offense. Don't just prove you belong in the room, she said once on the damn table. 2 years later, I became director of infrastructure. And last quarter, I replaced Janet. Not because she quit, she promoted me. I'm now CEO of Etherline. The same girl who used to unclog hair from her mama's salon sink now runs a multi-million-dollar sustainable aviation company from a corner office on the 50th floor overlooking downtown Austin. And still, my parents have no idea. They think I'm still out there fixing planes or whatever. We haven't spoken in over 6 months. The last text I got from my mom was a forwarded meme that said, "Success is being humble." That was 2 months ago. But yesterday something changed. My assistant Mia buzzed in. Izzy, you've got a partnership request coming in from a mid-tier operator, Delta Sky Private. Says they're looking to integrate with our routing API. I shrugged. Sure, set up a screening. She hesitated. The inquiry came through, your dad's shop. I froze. My father had apparently partnered with a local aviation operator through one of his longtime military buddies, hoping to land a fleet optimization deal. Unknowingly, he'd sent his proposal straight to me. His company had no idea Etherline was run by the daughter he once said wouldn't last a month in real business. He wanted to book a meeting with our executive team. My team, my company. I stared out the window at the Austin skyline, heart pounding. I could already hear his voice. Wait, you're the CEO. What kind of joke is this? It wasn't a joke. And I wasn't that girl anymore. Schedule them, I said, voice even. Put them in the boardroom. Friday morning. Mia's brows lifted. Want me to brief the... No, I said, a slow smile forming. Let's keep it a surprise. But I wasn't ready for who he was bringing with him. That night, I checked the client submission forms and froze. One of the names listed Linda Carver, angel investor, former DARPA engineer, now one of the top 5 black female venture capitalists in the country. The woman I'd been chasing for 18 months. The woman who could take Etherline from cutting edge to industry defining. She wasn't coming for a cold pitch. She was coming with my father. And he had no idea. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady, counting its rotations like they were the seconds between one version of me and the next. At some point around 3 a.m., I got up, brewed a bitter pot of coffee, and sat at the kitchen island in my high-rise apartment, staring out at the faint orange glow of downtown Austin. Below me, the city hummed. My fingers drummed against the marble as my mind played out every scenario. Would he recognize me before I walked in? Would he leave when he realized who I was? Would Linda Carver, one of the most sought-after minds in tech capital, think less of me because my father once told me to stop acting like a man when I challenged him on business decisions? By 6:45 a.m., I was dressed. Not just dressed, armored. Navy power suit, sharp shoulder lines, hair in a perfect twist, earrings that said, "I own the building," not "I'm trying to impress you." I didn't pick the clothes for them. I picked them for me. For the version of Izzy Morales who had rebuilt herself from the cracked concrete of South Bronx into the skyline of Austin. For the girl who used to read Wired magazine in secret because her parents said tech was for white folks and nerds. For the woman who would in a few hours walk into a boardroom as a ghost and emerge as a storm. 9:53 a.m. Mia buzzed in. "They're here. Your father and a woman with him. Carver, I believe." I exhaled slowly once. Put them in the Sky Lounge. Give them the Etherline treatment. You want to keep the reveal? Absolutely. 5 minutes later, I stood behind the tinted glass of the observation deck, watching as they entered. My father hadn't changed much. Still broad-shouldered, clean-shaved posture, stiff like he was reporting for duty. He wore his old Marine Corps pin, the one he used to polish every Sunday. His suit was new but ill-fitted, like someone had told him last minute he needed to look presentable. His jaw was tight. Always was. Beside him, Linda Carver looked effortlessly in command. No clipboard, no briefcase, just an espresso in one hand and a gleaming smartwatch on the other. She moved like she owned gravity, like the air adjusted to her steps. I could see why half of Silicon Valley was afraid of her. They didn't see me yet. My heart thumped once hard, then settled. Mia entered the lounge. "The CEO will be with you shortly," she said cheerfully. My dad nodded, adjusting his collar. "Tell him we appreciate the time," he said. "We've got numbers to discuss." Him. Of course. He had no clue. I turned and walked to the executive elevator. As it descended, the hum of the engine mirrored the low buzz in my chest. This was it. The doors slid open and I stepped out onto the lounge floor. My heels echoed across the hardwood, each step slow, deliberate. My father turned first, his brow furrowed. Recognition flickered, hesitated. Then disbelief. "Isabel," he said. Not Izzy. "Isabel, my full name only came out when I was in trouble or about to be lectured." "What the hell are you doing here? I work here," I said, calmly extending my hand to Linda. "Ms. Carver, I'm Isabel Morales, CEO of Etherline." Linda smiled, shaking my hand with quiet firmness. "So you're the one behind all this clean jet tech. I've been watching from afar. Then I hope you like what you've seen." "I like bold moves," she replied. "This one." Her eyes flicked toward my father. Unexpected, but interesting. My dad was still frozen mouth, slightly agape. "You're the CEO?" "Yes," I gestured to the room. "All of this, mine." He blinked. "But you were just winded. How? You always told me the world doesn't owe me answers, Dad. So I stopped giving them." Linda laughed under her breath, amused by the tension. "Should I give you two a moment?" "No," I said, pulling out the presentation tablet. "This is business. You came here for a partnership. Let's talk terms." My father opened his mouth and shut it. He took the seat across from me, but I saw it the shift. The unease. He wasn't leading this room anymore. I was. We launched into the pitch. Routing efficiencies, noise reduction benchmarks, carbon-neutral scheduling protocols. Linda asked sharp-pointed questions, and I met everyone with data confidence and evidence of our Q2 expansions into mid-market fleets. But my dad, He kept quiet. Too quiet. Until I pulled up the final deck projected cost reductions for Delta Sky using our app-integrated load optimization. This is the future of aviation, I said. Accessible, clean, smart, scalable. Linda leaned back, nodding slowly. Impressive. She glanced sideways at my father. Did you know your partner here had a daughter who built one of the most advanced aviation platforms in the country? I didn't, he said, voice low. She never told us. Maybe you weren't listening, she said, swirling her espresso. Silence wrapped the room tight. My fingers hovered over the screen. I wanted to say more, so much more, but I held it. Not here, not now. This wasn't a therapy session, it was a deal. Ms. Morales, Linda said, suddenly tapping the table. I'd like to schedule a deeper strategy session. Off the record, just you and me, no intermediaries. Of course, I said. Tomorrow morning, done. She stood, smoothed her jacket, and nodded once. Gentlemen. With that, she walked out, leaving me alone with the man who once told me dreams were for people with trust funds and nothing to lose. He stared at the floor. I don't get it, he muttered. How'd you do all this without us? I tilted my head. Maybe because of you. Or maybe in spite of you. Honestly, I haven't decided. His face pinched like the words stung. But then he said something I wasn't ready for. I thought you failed, he whispered. We thought you were lost. No, Dad, I replied, my voice steady. I was building. And just as I stood to leave, Mia's voice crackled through the intercom again. Isabel, you might want to come to the lobby. Why? Your mother's here. She says she's here for the meeting. I didn't move right away. I stood there for a few seconds staring at the intercom like the words hadn't registered. My mother was in the lobby. My mother who hadn't spoken to me in nearly a year, whose last voicemail was a clipped, sarcastic guess, you're too busy to call your family. She was here. At Etherline. On today of all days. My chest tightened the same way it used to when she'd walk into my room, unannounced, eyes scanning my report cards for imperfections. Should I send her up? Mia asked gently through the intercom. I swallowed. Yeah, put her in the lounge. My father was still seated, elbows on his knees, rubbing his hands together like he was scrubbing invisible grease off his palms. When I looked at him, I saw fatigue, not the kind from work, but the kind that settles into a person when their version of the world begins to collapse. She's here, he asked, not even bothering to mask the concern in his voice. I nodded. Seems like you didn't tell her where you were going. He said nothing. That silence said everything. 2 minutes later, I heard the soft click of the lounge door opening. My mother stepped in like she was entering church, rigid back, clasped purse lips drawn tight. Her dress was simple navy blue with white trim, the same one she wore to my high school graduation. The one she left early from to go tend to a client's hair emergency. Her eyes found me, and for a split second, something flickered, shock maybe? But it was gone in an instant. Well, she said, looking around, you've certainly done well decorating. No hug, no smile, no I missed you. I stepped forward, extending a hand like I had with Linda. Mom, welcome to Etherline. She glanced at my hand like it was a trick. We came here to talk about a partnership, she said, flatly, eyes shifting to my father. Isn't that right? My father cleared his throat but didn't respond. I stayed calm. And you're talking to the CEO. My mother blinked. The CEO of what? I gestured around. This. All of it. She stared at me, expression unreadable, until she finally said, It's true. You're the one running this place. I nodded. She let out a small huff. And here I thought you were still answering phones. Your cousin Carmen said she saw you wearing a badge at some airport job 2 years ago. I replied, and now I'm here. She looked away, jaw twitching. I turned to both of them. Let's not pretend this is a family reunion. You came to pitch a client partnership. Let's talk numbers. But my mom wasn't ready to move on. Why didn't you tell us, she asked. Why'd you let us go on thinking you'd failed? Because every time I tried to show you who I was becoming, I said, voice low, you looked for a way to tear it down. She flinched slightly, but I didn't stop. You mocked Columbia. You dismissed my job. When I sent you articles about Etherline's seed funding, you left me on red. I stopped trying because it hurt too damn much. The silence that followed was heavy like pressure in a storm. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a folded flyer, creased faded. You know what this is? She asked. I took it from her slowly. It was a printout of Etherline's very first investor demo 3 years ago. I remembered printing it on a library printer, handing it out at a half-empty co-working space to a room full of people who barely looked up from their laptops. You mailed us this, she said. We never said anything. But I kept it. I didn't know why. Maybe part of me? I don't know. She stopped herself, sat down stiffly, and fixed her eyes on the floor. My father finally spoke. You know, I thought I had to raise you tough so the world wouldn't break you. I met his gaze. Turns out the world didn't. You almost did. He looked away. I let out a breath and tapped on my tablet, bringing up a new presentation. We're not here to settle our past. We're here for a possible contract. Etherline is expanding fleet partnerships. Your Delta Sky proposal isn't bad, but it lacks back-end integration. Your platform's API is 6 years outdated, and your logistics chain is over-indexed on legacy data. That's a liability. My mother blinked. Wait, what? I looked at her directly. You don't get to walk into this building and expect me to hand you a deal just because we share blood. This is a negotiation. Her lips thinned. We brought this opportunity to you. No, you brought it to a company. You just didn't know the company belonged to me. At that moment, the lounge door opened again. Linda Carver stepped back in a sleek tablet in hand and a knowing glint in her eyes. Apologies, she said, cool as ice. Had to take a call. But I thought I'd rejoin for the final pitch. My mother turned to her, startled. You're a part of this? Linda gave her a once-over, then smiled thinly. I'm considering an equity investment. She turned to me. Isabel, can we talk in private? Of course, I said, standing. As we walked toward the elevator, Linda leaned closer. That was a masterclass in controlled fire, she murmured. Thanks. But now she added, I need to know if you can do something harder. What's that? She hit the elevator button. Prove you can lead without needing revenge. The doors opened and she stepped inside. I followed. Just as the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my parents through the glass. Still sitting, still stunned. The elevator hummed softly as it rose, glass walls revealing the Austin skyline stretching into mid-morning haze. Linda stood beside me, her arms crossed, eyes narrowed in thought. I could feel her sizing me up, not as a threat, but as a possibility. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was loaded like the pause between a question and the truth. She broke it first. I've reviewed your quarterly numbers. Your burn rate's better than half the funded startups I've seen this year. I keep a lean team. We don't burn what we don't need. That's smart, but that's not what impresses me. I glanced sideways. Then what? You managed to scale a legacy-resistant sector without leaning on your name, your gender, or your trauma. That's rare. I didn't have the luxury, I said. I had to earn my way in from a folding chair in a borrowed office. She smirked. You ever wonder why I agreed to this meeting? Because our predictive routing algorithm can shave 11% off your conference fleet's logistics costs. She let out a dry chuckle. That's part of it. But it's also because I've been watching your public silence. You've stayed out of press drama, ignored viral bait, and turned down 2 speaking gigs that could have blown your face across every tech blog in America. That tells me one thing: you're playing a long game. I nodded, but my pulse quickened. Because she was right. I wasn't building Etherline to sell, I was building it to stay. To reshape the system that once told girls like me to go be someone's assistant and stay grateful. The elevator stopped on the executive floor. As the doors opened, Linda paused before stepping out. There's a venture consortium forming. Quiet for now, invite only. We're assembling companies that can redefine legacy systems, not just tweak them. Aviation, healthcare, education, the real beasts. I followed her into the glass conference room. And you think Etherline belongs in that circle? I think you do, but I need to see one more thing. What? If you can survive your past without letting it compromise your future. She sat down, folded her hands, and waited. I closed the door, heart pounding a little faster now. What do you want to know? Let's talk about today's pitch. You have every right to hold your parents at arm's length. I would have walked out if I were you. I thought about it. But you didn't. You stayed. You didn't just hold your ground, you invited them to sit at your table. That's not weakness. That's dangerous strength. I sat across from her steady. What are you really asking me, Linda? I want to see if you can finish this deal while managing the baggage that comes with it. You need to finalize this contract with Delta Sky, close the loop with your team, and if I see maturity, strategic maturity, I'm prepared to offer a 7-figure bridge investment and bring you into the consortium. My breath caught for just a second. 7 figures. Dispersed over 2 tranches. No control clauses. Advisory access only. I want to see you scale without diluting who you are. I blinked once, twice. You're serious. She smiled, slow and precise, deadly. It was everything I'd worked for, more than I dared admit. A lifeline, a launch pad, and a test. Before I could answer, Mia's voice cut through the intercom. Isabel, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you might want to see this. Linda arched an eyebrow. On screen, I said. The wall display flickered on, pulling up the live feed from our main reception. My stomach dropped. A man I didn't recognize, slick hair, charcoal suit, clearly corporate, stood beside my mother. He was holding a folder. I tapped the feed, enlarging the audio. We should have gone through me first, he was saying. I told you personal ties complicate clean negotiation. The board doesn't like uncertainty. My mother shook her head. She's my daughter. This matters. And I represent your company's interests, he snapped. If you want this partnership to move forward, we need to control the narrative. She can't just play CEO and expect full board compliance. Linda's eyes narrowed. I muted the feed hands, trembling slightly. He's from my parents' board. I saw his name on the Delta Sky Docs, Ethan Rosen. Looks like someone's trying to cut you out of your own win, Linda said. I swallowed hard. He's not just trying, he thinks he already did. A storm started to build in my chest, but it wasn't panic. It was clarity. I stood. I need to go back down. Linda rose with me. You want backup? No, but I'll need that contract template sent to legal. You'll have it in an hour. I headed for the elevator, fingers tightening around the tablet in my hand. If Ethan Rosen thought he could hijack this deal and silence me with corporate maneuvering, he had another thing coming. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about power. And I'd spent far too long watching people like him mistake my quiet for consent. As the elevator doors closed around me, I saw one final frame on the reception feed, Ethan sliding a contract across the glass table, and my mother hesitating hand hovering over the pen. The elevator doors slid open and I stepped out into the reception lobby like I'd been walking into court. Not just any court, the kind where your name is on the docket and you're both witness and defendant. Ethan Rosen didn't notice me at first. He was too busy gesturing toward the contract folder like he was unveiling treasure. My mother sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap, a signature pen resting just inches from her fingers. Her eyes flicked to me before she said a word. Isabel. Her voice was low, tight, not quite surprised, but not ready either. Ethan turned. His face shifted instantly from salesman to predator, recognizing a rival. Miss Morales, he said, smile too, rehearsed. We were just discussing the next steps for Delta Sky's partnership with Etherline. I was hoping we could move this process along more efficiently. I ignored the handshake he offered and kept my tone flat. You're not on our approved negotiation roster. And this meeting wasn't scheduled through our partnerships channel. Well, I assumed he said smoothing his tie given the overlap of family and business. Here it made sense to streamline. You assumed wrong. I stepped closer, tilting my head slightly. This isn't a family picnic, Ethan. This is a corporate negotiation. And unless your name's on the executive MOU or you've filed your representative authorization through council, you don't belong in this building. He blinked, clearly not expecting the full-force CEO tone. My mother cleared her throat, trying to bridge. I told him I wanted to wait, Isabel. He just saw an opportunity to cut me out, I finished. And you almost let him. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ethan stepped in again, recovering. Let's be honest, Ms. Morales. This deal benefits all parties. Your name's on the building, sure, but you don't want the bad blood to cloud something this strategic, right? I walked over to the front desk, tapped the intercom, and said, Mia, call security. Escort Mr. Rosen off the premises. Non-stakeholder attempting to negotiate under false capacity. His smile dropped. You're overreacting. And you're overreaching. I leaned in. You thought this was still the same Isabel who used to bring coffee to boardrooms. I build the rooms now. And I decide who sits in them. He glanced toward my mother, hoping for backup, but she stayed silent. I turned to her. You said you kept that old flyer because part of you believed in me. Well, this is your moment. You want to be my partner? You meet me eye to eye. Not behind closed doors with someone who thinks CEO is just decoration. Ethan scoffed, but security was already approaching. He muttered something under his breath about small-town egos and stormed out. I stood in the echo of his footsteps, chest heaving slightly, but my voice remained steady. Mom, let's go upstairs. If you still want to be part of this deal, we're doing it the right way. She hesitated, then stood and followed me into the elevator. Neither of us spoke as we ascended. I could feel her watching me, but I didn't give her anything. Not until we were inside the lounge again, door closed, glass sealed off from the rest of the world. She sat. I didn't. You know, I said slowly, the hardest part of building Etherline wasn't the capital or the tech. It was teaching myself to believe I deserved to lead, that I didn't have to apologize for ambition. She looked up. I never asked you to apologize. No, you just never celebrated when I won. The words landed like bricks. She didn't flinch, but her hands tensed in her lap. We were scared, she said finally. Your father and I, we thought if we didn't push you, you'd disappear. We didn't know how to support what we didn't understand. I didn't need you to understand, I said. I needed you to see me. You saw obedience. You saw utility. But you never saw me. She looked down. I see you now. I let the silence breathe, let it sting. Then I sat, pulled up the contract template from my tablet, and pushed it across the table. We're going to redraft the Delta Sky terms. You'll represent your board transparently. No back channels, no Ethan. You negotiate with me or not at all. She picked up the tablet, her hands shaking just slightly. And if the board pushes back, then they don't deserve the deal. For the next hour we worked. It wasn't easy. She tried to soften terms that didn't need softening. I stood firm on every data requirement, every review clause, every fleet audit protocol. But somewhere between Section 5 and Section 10, something shifted. She stopped negotiating like a parent and started speaking like a peer. Not once did she mention my childhood. Not once did she bring up family. She just worked. By the time we stood to shake hands, the sun had shifted in the sky, casting long beams of light across the lounge floor. My mother looked different in that light, smaller, older, but also freer. She glanced around the room, then at me. This place is... it's you. All of it. I didn't smile, not yet, but I nodded. Just then my watch buzzed. Mia again. Isabel, she said through the comms, you're going to want to come downstairs. Another surprise. Not exactly, it's Mr. Winston. My heart skipped. What's he doing here? He says he's ready to talk final numbers. And he brought his legal counsel. I met my mother's eyes. Duty calls, I said, already heading for the elevator. But before I stepped in, she reached out, touching my sleeve lightly. Make it yours, Isabel, all of it. I didn't say thank you, not yet. But I nodded once. And then the doors closed. The elevator glided down like time itself was holding its breath. My reflection on the steel doors looked different. Still me, but not the girl who once waited tables while dreaming in code. Not the daughter constantly shrinking to make space for her parents' pride. I was walking into a moment I had built, brick by brick, mistake by mistake. And James Winston Tech, mogul unicorn whisperer, walking venture capital legend was sitting in my lobby ready to write the next chapter. When I stepped into the reception, I saw him right away. He wore a black wool blazer over a navy tea dress, casual, but the kind of casual that said, I could buy this building before lunch. His legal counsel sat beside him, thin and sharp in a silver suit, scrolling through a digital tablet. Winston stood when he saw me. Isabel, he said with a warm smile, glad you could join us. I hope we didn't ambush. I've had worse surprises today, I said, shaking his hand. Though not many. He laughed, and just like that, the tension cracked. We walked to the executive lounge, now cleared of parents and ghosts, and settled around the conference table. Mia brought in coffee and sparkling water. I didn't touch either. My focus was razor-edged. Winston got right to it. You've got something no one else in this space has, he said. Predictive fleet logistics for small-scale private aviation. Everyone's chasing luxury or charter volume. You saw what the market needed before it knew it. I nodded, keeping my breathing steady. He continued. Here's what I'm offering: exclusive transport contract for all Winston Corp events, demos, and roadshows. In exchange, I want a % equity stake and 2 board observer seats. My jaw tightened slightly. It was generous on paper, but it wasn't free. Board observers, I repeated carefully, so not voting members? Correct. No voting rights, no operational interference, just insight. And full disclosure, I'd also propose a preferred exit clause. If there's ever an acquisition offer, I get first look. I leaned back watching him. He was confident but not arrogant. Testing but respectful. My voice came out calm. James, you've built 5 companies and exited 4. You know what I'm about to say. He smiled. Say it anyway. I didn't build Etherline to sell. That made his lawyer glance up. Winston just nodded. Then tell me what you did build it for. For every woman who's been called ambitious like it's a flaw. For every first-gen founder who had to translate contracts for their parents before pitching to investors. For people who were told they were too quiet, too emotional, too green. He leaned forward. Then let's build it together. You set the terms. I'll counter where I have to, but I want in. It wasn't just business anymore, it was a vote of belief. Still, I didn't answer right away. I tapped my tablet and pulled up a revised term sheet, the one Linda had helped me prep. I slid it over to his counsel. 5% equity, no exit clause, 1 observer seat, and a joint innovation lab. You want to ride this wave, you help build the next one. His lawyer's eyebrows shot up. Winston laughed softly, bold, non-negotiable. He held my gaze. Done. We shook hands across the table, just like that Etherline had locked in its most powerful partner yet. An hour later, as they left with signed copies and plans for next quarter's rollout, Mia peeked into my office. You might want to check your email, she said, hesitant. I opened my laptop. Front and center, an alert from Delta Sky's internal legal server. Subject, urgent action required. Attached, an unsigned memo from Ethan Rosen requesting an internal board vote to dissolve the Delta Sky Etherline partnership due to concerns of leadership instability and personal conflict of interest. My breath caught. He was still trying. still clawing at the deal even after I'd removed him from the building. And worse, he had traction. A dozen CC'd names, several familiar board members. I stared at the screen for several long seconds, the cursor blinking like a dare. Then I opened a new draft. Typed 3 words into the subject line. Let's finish this. The boardroom was colder than usual, the AC cranked a little too high, or maybe it was just the chill of politics in the air. I walked in exactly on time heels, clicking against the polished floor like punctuation marks. Around the table sat 9 people, 6 of them I knew by name, 3 I only recognized from LinkedIn profiles and prior calls. Ethan Rosen wasn't among them. He didn't need to be. His memo had done the dirty work for him, floating like poison among their inboxes. Janice Liu, the board's acting chair, nodded once. Thanks for making time, Isabel. I assume this is about Rosen's memo. There was no pretense, no soft opening. We've received concerns, she said carefully, that your personal involvement in the Delta Sky contract creates potential conflicts of interest, especially given your family's stake in the agency. My family does not hold equity in Etherline, I said flatly. And the contract was negotiated with full transparency. You've seen the logs, the time-stamped versions, the chain of approvals. Still, she continued, the optics aren't ideal. There it was. That word again. Optics. The thin veil they always use to mask fear of someone like me, young, female, brown-skinned, holding this much control without playing by their inherited rulebook. So what exactly is this, I asked? A vote of confidence, a coup. A man to my left. Granger Venture rep from Horizon Equity cleared his throat. We're not questioning your leadership, but with recent media interest in your Rise, Forbes, TechCrunch, that podcast interview, it would be strategic to consider bringing in a co-CEO. Someone to complement your voice with broader, operational oversight. Say what you mean, Granger. You want a white man with gray hair to stand beside me at press events so your LPs feel safer. He looked away, no denial. I stood. You all knew who I was when I started this. You saw the garage numbers, the pilot runs the early contracts. You backed me when I had nothing but a prototype and a pitch deck. Now that the brand has heat, you want to repackage it into something easier to digest for your legacy donors. Janice sighed. Isabel, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I looked around the room, met each of their eyes. I'm not the one making it hard, you are. Then I opened my tablet, pulled up the clause I'd spent all night verifying with Linda's legal team. Section 4.2 of the original board agreement states that no structural change to executive leadership can be enacted without a supermajority and only after a formal 14-day dispute review process. This meeting doesn't meet either threshold. So, unless you're prepared to violate your own governance, we're done here. Janice paused. That clause was written for emergency buyout, and it applies to leadership challenges, I cut in. Unless someone wants to call legal. The room fell quiet. No one did. I thought so. As I gathered my things, I said one final thing, slow, deliberate. You didn't invest in me because I was safe. You invested because I could see the future before it arrived. I'm still doing that. The only question now is whether you're coming with me or watching from behind. I walked out without waiting for a reply. Outside the conference room, Mia was waiting with a half-panicked look on her face. You need to see this. She handed me her tablet. It was open to a live-stream Skyport TechCon, the annual private aviation summit. And on stage, to my absolute shock, stood James Winston. He wasn't promoting Winston Corp. He was announcing a new partnership. And that's why he said, voice booming over the speakers. We're launching a joint innovation lab in Austin Winston X Etherline Labs to develop the next frontier of adaptive logistics co-led by our own engineers and Isabel Morales. The audience erupted in applause. I blinked, my mind racing to catch up. Winston hadn't told me this was part of the plan. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda. That was your final test? He's all in? Welcome to the real table. And just like that, everything shifted. Winston wasn't just a contract now, he was a kingmaker, and he'd just chosen a queen. As I looked up at the glass walls of my building, my company, I saw my reflection again. But this time, I wasn't alone. Behind me, inside the elevator, stood someone I didn't expect. My father. He looked older than I remembered. But his eyes weren't disappointed or judgmental this time. They were proud, and he was holding something in his hand. The contract. Signed. Story 2, I'm giving you 1 week to prove your worth keeping. Day 1. She realized I'm worth way more than she ever was. Ultimatums work both ways. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This story is 100% true and happened over the last few months. It's long, but trust me, the ending makes it worth reading every word. TLDR at the bottom, but you'll miss all the good stuff. Before I get into the main story, you need some background on how I got here. I'm 32 construction project manager for a major commercial firm in Phoenix. Started as a basic crew member, making $45,000 right out of high school. But I'm one of those guys who actually works hard and learns the business inside and out. 8 years ago, I started my own side business doing high-end residential renovations. Word of mouth spread fast when you actually show up on time and deliver quality work. 3 years ago, I sold that business to a larger company for $780,000 and got hired as their senior project manager. Now I make $165,000 base plus profit sharing. That adds another $300,000 in good years. Not millionaire rich, but comfortable enough that money stress isn't really a thing anymore. Met my wife Jessica at a friend's wedding 4 years ago. She was working as a marketing coordinator for some boutique salon, making maybe $38,000. But man, she was stunning. Like the kind of beautiful that makes other women hate her. And guys walk into glass doors. I was 28 making good money and thought I'd won the lottery. Looking back, the red flags were everywhere from day one. First date, she ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, then barely touched it. Always forgot her purse when we went out. Would get moody if I suggested staying in instead of going to expensive restaurants. But I was thinking with the wrong head, you know. We got married 2 years later. Big wedding. That cost me $52,000 because she always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding. Her parents contributed exactly $0 but had plenty of opinions about the venue and catering. Here's where my buddy Jake comes in. Jake's my best friend since high school, works in cybersecurity and has zero filter. He's also the funniest guy you'll ever meet and has been calling out Jessica's nonsense since day one. Dude, she's gorgeous, but she's going to drain you dry. He told me before the wedding. I've seen her type. She's collecting your benefits while shopping for an upgrade. I thought he was just being paranoid. Jake's always been suspicious of women, ever since his ex-fiancée cheated on him with her personal trainer. But Jake turned out to be absolutely right. The first 2 years of marriage were decent. Jessica quit her job 6 months in because the salon was toxic and she wanted to focus on building our life together, which apparently meant redecorating our house every few months and taking girls' trips to Napa Valley. I didn't mind supporting her initially. I was making good money and she kept the house nice, but slowly the entitlement started showing. Designer handbags became necessities. A $280 hair appointment every 6 weeks was basic maintenance. Yoga classes, Pilates, personal training, nutrition coaching. Everything was an investment in her health. Meanwhile, I'm working 55 to 65-hour weeks dealing with construction delays and contractor drama. And she's complaining that I'm never present when I'm home. 6 months ago, things started getting really bad. She started making comments about my coworkers' wives and their lifestyles. Brad's wife drives a BMW X5. Why am I still in that old Honda Lisa's husband bought her a tennis bracelet for their anniversary? I got dinner at Olive Garden. I started noticing she was always on her phone giggling at texts she wouldn't show me. When I asked about it, she'd say it was just her sister or college friends. But Jessica's sister lives in Portland and hates her, and she doesn't really have close friends, just other wives she networks with. 3 weeks ago, Jake came over for our monthly Call of Duty session. Jessica made a point of walking through the living room in workout clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. Your wife seems happy, Jake said after she left. Yeah, why? She's been posting a lot on Instagram. Lots of gym selfies with hashtags like living my best life and worth it. Girls only do that when they're fishing for attention. He showed me her Instagram. I barely looked at it anymore, but he was right. She'd been posting constantly workout videos, smoothie pics, motivational quotes about knowing your worth, and never settling for less. Bro, this is textbook branch-swinging behavior. Jake said she's advertising her availability without technically being single. I'd bet money she's already got someone lined up. I told him he was paranoid, but the seed was planted. That's when I started noticing things. How she'd take her phone into the bathroom. How she'd suddenly have errands that took 3 hours. How she'd come home from the gym with perfect makeup. Tuesday afternoon, I was managing a crisis at our biggest job site, a $15 million office complex where the electrical contractor had messed up the whole 4th floor high-stress situation. But this is what they pay me the big money for. My phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. I need 1 week to think about whether this marriage is worth saving. I stared at that text for a solid minute. Not whether we can work things out or whether we should try counseling, whether the marriage was worth saving. Like she was evaluating a subscription service she might cancel. Most guys would panic, start calling, texting, asking what they did wrong. But something about the way she phrased it just made me angry. She was treating our marriage like a quarterly business review. I finished dealing with the electrical crisis first because that's what professionals do. Then I texted back, "Take all the time you need. I'll be making some evaluations of my own." Her response was instant. What's that supposed to mean? It means ultimatums. Work both ways. Enjoy your week. I immediately called Jake. She did what he said when I told him. Gave me a week to prove the marriage is worth saving. Jake started laughing so hard I thought he was going to choke. Dude, she just gave you a get-out-of-jail-free card and doesn't even know it. What do you mean? Think about it. She's basically saying she's not sure about the marriage that gives you legal cover to start protecting your assets. Plus, I guarantee she's been planning this. Nobody sends an ultimatum like that without having backup plans. Jake was right. I started thinking about the Instagram posts, the secretive phone behavior, the sudden interest in self-improvement. You know what you need to do, Jake continued. Document everything. And I mean everything. Her spending, her behavior. Communications. If this goes south, you want evidence that she checked out of the marriage first. That evening, I came home to find Jessica in the kitchen clearly expecting some big emotional conversation. She was wearing one of those outfits that cost $200 and looks like she threw it on carelessly. We should talk, she said. About what you said? You need a week to think. I'm giving you space to think. I think you're misunderstanding what I meant. Really? Because I need 1 week to think about whether this marriage is worth saving. Seems pretty clear to me. Her face flushed. I meant we both need to evaluate things. Your text was pretty specific. You need to think about whether the marriage is worth saving. Nothing about mutual evaluation. I grabbed a water from the fridge. But since you brought up evaluation, let's talk about what you're actually evaluating. My income. The house, the lifestyle I provide. Because I notice you didn't pause your evaluation period to actually work on our relationship. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're testing the waters to see if you can do better. She didn't deny it. That told me everything I needed to know. You know what I said? You're right. We should both evaluate things starting now. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, the credit card companies removed her as an authorized user on all accounts. Then our bank transferred half our joint savings into a separate account I opened online. What are you doing? She demanded. Giving you an accurate picture of what you're evaluating. Hard to decide if a marriage is worth saving while you're spending the other person's money. Her face went white. You can't just cut me off financially. Actually, I can. We're both adults. If you're not sure about our marriage, you should experience what being single actually looks like. I called Jake while she stood there speechless. Operation Reality Check is a go, I told him. Jake showed up 20 minutes later with takeout and energy drinks. Heard there's been some developments in the Johnson household. Jessica was still in the kitchen, probably calling her sister or one of her gym friends to complain about how unreasonable I was being. So, what's the game plan, Jake asked. I'm giving her exactly what she asked for. A week to evaluate the marriage, but she's going to evaluate it with complete honesty. No safety net, no shared resources, no cushion. Brutal. I love it. Jake opened his drink. What about the house? She can stay for the week after that. We'll see what she decides and what I decide. Jake grinned. This is going to be better than Netflix. Wednesday morning, I woke up, hit the gym, and went to work like normal. Jake texted me around 10 a.m. How's the wife handling her new budget reality? Haven't heard from her. She's probably still figuring out how to pay for her latte without my credit card. Want me to drive by the house and see if she's crying on the porch? You're terrible. But yes, Jake works remotely most days, so he has the flexibility to be my reconnaissance. Around noon, he sent me a photo of Jessica's car still in the driveway with the caption, "Target appears to be hibernating." I didn't hear from Jessica all day. No texts asking about the cards, no calls demanding explanations. Either she was plotting something, or she still didn't realize how serious I was. I came home to find her waiting in the living room with a whole presentation set up. She had her laptop open, spreadsheets on the screen, and what looked like a pros and cons list. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, she started. That's what I told you to do. I made a list of our relationship strengths and areas for improvement. She actually had a PowerPoint presentation about our marriage like it was a business proposal. Interesting approach, I said, sitting down. Let's see it. She clicked to the first slide. Our relationship. Current state analysis. Jake would have died laughing if he could see this. As you can see, Jessica continued, we have several core competencies as a couple. Financial stability, shared lifestyle preferences, physical attraction, social compatibility. Wait, stop right there. Financial stability. You mean my financial stability that you benefit from? We're a team, David. Teams don't give each other ultimatums about whether the partnership is worth continuing. She clicked to the next slide. Areas for growth. The list included things like better work-life balance. Translation, I should work less. Improved communication. Translation, I should ask before making financial decisions and shared goal setting. Translation, I should fund her goals. This is interesting, Jess, but I noticed something missing from your analysis. What's that? Any acknowledgement that you might need to contribute something to this marriage? Beyond looking pretty and spending my money. Her face tightened. I contribute plenty. I manage our social calendar, maintain our home, provide emotional support. You mean you plan dinners with friends I pay for, redecorate with my money, and provide emotional support by giving me ultimatums? I stood up. Here's my feedback on your presentation. It reads like someone trying to negotiate a better benefits package, not someone who wants to fix their marriage. Jake texted me while she was still processing that, bro. She's posting Instagram stories about making hard decisions and choosing happiness. Definitely fishing for sympathy. I showed Jessica the text. Seems like you're already working on your exit strategy. That's not what those posts mean, really. Because to everyone else, it looks like you're advertising that you're available. She couldn't deny it because that's exactly what she was doing. You know what, Jess? I think this evaluation period is exactly what we both needed. You're getting clarity on what you want, and I'm getting clarity on who you really are. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm starting to wonder if the problem isn't that. You don't know if the marriage is worth saving. The problem is that you don't know if I'm worth keeping around for your benefit. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out because that was exactly right. My phone rang. Jake, hey, you need to get on Instagram right now, he said. Your wife just posted something you need to see. I opened Instagram while Jessica watched nervously. Her latest story was a photo of her wedding ring on a table next to a coffee cup with the caption, "Sometimes you have to evaluate what's truly serving your highest good self-love. Worth it, new chapter." Are you kidding me, I said, showing her the screen. It's not about you. You posted a picture of your wedding ring with hashtags about new chapters while you're supposedly evaluating our marriage. What exactly is it about Jake was still on the phone, barely containing his laughter? Dude, she's getting roasted in the comments. Your coworker's wife just asked if everything's okay at home. I looked at Jessica. Well, this is perfect. Now everyone knows you're shopping around while still married to me. I wasn't shopping around. Then what do you call posting thirst traps with captions about knowing your worth while asking for a week to evaluate your marriage? She didn't have an answer because there wasn't a good one. Thursday morning, Jake showed up at my house at 7 a.m. with coffee and donuts. Emergency strategy session. He announced your wife's Instagram activity last night was next level. Crazy. What happened after I went to bed? Jake pulled out his phone. She posted 3 more stories. One about toxic masculinity, one about financial abuse, and one that's just a picture of herself at the gym with the caption, "Investing in my future." She's calling me financially abusive for cutting off credit cards she's not even legally entitled to. Gets better? Check the comments on her posts. Jake scrolled through them. Most were supportive messages from other wives talking about knowing your worth, and you deserve better, queen. But there were some interesting ones from people who actually knew us. My coworker Brad's wife had commented. Wait, aren't you married? Is everything okay? Jessica's response, just taking time to reflect on what I want out of life. She's basically announcing your marriage is over without actually saying it. Jake pointed out classic branch swinging behavior. She's lining up sympathy and potential options before she makes her move. So, what's your master plan? Jake grinned. We give her exactly what she's advertising for. If she wants to act single, she can experience being single. But first we need to document everything. He pulled out a folder. I've been screenshotting everything. Her post comments the timeline of her behavior. If this goes to divorce court, you want proof that she checked out first. You've been busy. Dude, I'm invested in this story now. Plus, I might be single, but I'm not stupid. Your wife's been disrespecting you for months, and you've been too nice to call her out. Someone needs to have your back. We spent the next hour going through Jessica's social media history. The pattern was clear. Over the past 6 months, her posts had shifted from couple photos to solo shots, from us captions to me captions, from showing appreciation for our life together to humble bragging about her lifestyle. Look at this one from 3 months ago. Jake said, showing me a post of her at an expensive restaurant. Caption says, "Dinner at my favorite spot." Not our favorite spot. She's been erasing you from her narrative for months. I can't believe I didn't see it because you're a decent guy who assumes other people are decent too. She's been playing a long game. Around noon, Jessica came downstairs. She'd clearly spent the morning crafting her appearance. Full makeup, expensive athleisure outfit, perfectly styled hair. Like she was getting ready for a photo shoot going somewhere special. I asked just the gym, then lunch with Madison. Madison was one of her newer friends, a recently divorced real estate agent who was always posting about her glow-up and new life. Sounds fun. How are you paying for lunch? Her face tightened. Madison offered to treat me. How generous. I'm sure she has lots of advice about your current situation. After she left, Jake and I settled in to watch the show unfold online. Within an hour, Jessica had posted gym selfies with captions about strength and resilience. Then a photo of an expensive-looking salad with Madison captioned, "Grateful for friends who remind you of your worth." She's literally documenting her exit strategy in real time, Jake observed. This is like watching a masterclass in branch swinging. But the best part came later that afternoon. Madison posted a story that included Jessica and Jake caught it before it disappeared. Bro, you need to see this. The story was a video of them at lunch, and you could hear Madison saying, "Girl, you deserve so much better. You're young, beautiful, smart. You can have anyone you want." Jessica's response, "I'm just trying to figure out what I actually want versus what I settled for." She's talking about your marriage like it's a starter job she's outgrown, Jake said. That evening, Jessica came home acting weird, extra cheerful, overly affectionate, asking about my day like she actually cared. Classic guilt behavior. "Have a good day?" I asked. "Yeah, really good. Madison and I had a great talk about life goals and priorities." Sounds enlightening. What kind of priorities? Just, making sure you're living authentically, not staying in situations that don't serve your growth. Jake, who was still there, nearly choked on his drink. That's deep. Jessica, very philosophical. She shot him a look. Some people understand the importance of personal development. Absolutely, Jake replied with a straight face. Personal development is crucial, like developing the personal integrity to address relationship issues directly instead of posting about them on Instagram. The room went dead silent. Jessica's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because your Instagram stories suggest you're going through some major life transitions. Very inspiring content." She looked at me like I'd betrayed her by letting Jake see her posts. "My social media is private. Nothing on Instagram is private, especially when you're posting about your marriage being in crisis." I said, "But I appreciate the transparency really helps with the evaluation process." She stormed upstairs, probably to call Madison and complain about how unsupportive I was being. Jake raised his drink. 2 evaluation periods that reveal exactly who people really are. Cheers to that. Friday morning brought the ultimate test. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Jessica came downstairs dressed like she was going to a nightclub, not the yoga class she claimed to have. "You look ready for yoga," I said. "It's a special class. Hot yoga with a networking component afterward." "Networking for what?" "You don't have a job. I'm exploring opportunities." Jake, who'd stayed over on the couch, walked into the kitchen at that exact moment. Exploring opportunities. That's one way to put it. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jessica snapped. Jake pulled out his phone. "Well, Madison posted some interesting stories last night about your lunch conversation. Want to hear them?" Jessica's face went white. "You're stalking my friends now. Social media is public information. But here's my favorite part. Madison recorded you saying, and I quote, 'I'm just trying to figure out what I actually want versus what I settled for.'" The kitchen went dead silent. "You recorded my private conversation," Jessica yelled at Jake. "Madison recorded it and posted it publicly. I just happened to save it before it disappeared." Jake grinned. "Technology is amazing, isn't it?" I looked at Jessica. "So this evaluation period isn't about our marriage, it's about whether you can trade up." "That's not. I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" "Because what I settled for pretty clearly refers to me." She couldn't answer because there was no good answer. Jake wasn't done. "Oh, but wait, there's more. Jessica want to tell David about your new Instagram followers, specifically the guys who've been sliding into your DMs since you started posting about new chapters." My wife's face went from white to bright red. "How could you possibly know that? Because 3 of them are guys?" "I know. And they all screenshot your responses to share in our group chat. Turns out you've been pretty receptive to their attention." I stared at Jessica. "You've been entertaining other guys while evaluating our marriage. It's not what you think." Jake pulled up screenshots on his phone. "Samo." Really, because here's you telling Tyler from your gym that you're going through some changes and would love to grab coffee sometime to talk. And here's you telling Brandon from Madison's real estate office that you're figuring out your next chapter and appreciate him being such a good listener. And my personal favorite are you telling Derek from yoga class that you're ready for new adventures and think he seems like exactly the kind of person who could show me what I've been missing. Each screenshot felt like a punch to the gut. Jessica had been actively pursuing other men while giving me an ultimatum about our marriage. "You've been cheating," I said quietly. "I haven't done anything physical. You've been emotionally cheating and lining up replacements while living in my house, eating my food, and using my Netflix password." Jake stood up. "David, I think it's time for the nuclear option." "What nuclear option? The one we planned for?" If she turned out to be exactly who I thought she was. Jake had spent the week not just documenting Jessica's behavior, but building a case. He'd been in contact with my lawyer, who specialized in divorce cases involving adultery and asset protection. "Here's what's going to happen," Jake announced. "Jessica, you wanted a week to evaluate your marriage. Well, the week's not over, but the evaluation is. You've been actively pursuing other men while demanding your husband prove his worth to you. That's not evaluating. That's cheating." He pulled out a folder. "David's been documenting everything. Your spending patterns, your social media activity, your communications with other men. Your complete lack of contribution to the household or relationship." Jessica looked panicked. "You can't use my private messages. They're not private when you're using them to cheat on your husband. And before you start crying about invasion of privacy, remember that you made your evaluation public when you started posting about it on Instagram." Jake turned to me. "David, you've got everything you need for a divorce that protects your assets and makes it clear she abandoned the marriage. Her behavior this week isn't going to look good to any judge." "What do you want?" Jessica asked, finally realizing she was trapped. "I want you to understand what you've actually lost. I said you thought you were evaluating whether I was worth keeping, but what you actually did was prove that you were never worthy of being kept." Jake handed her a piece of paper. "That's a list of everything you'll be giving up when you leave the house. The car payments, the insurance, the lifestyle, the credit cards, the joint accounts. All of it. You can't just kick me out." Actually, he can. "Jake said you've been committing adultery, you don't contribute financially, and you've publicly stated the marriage isn't working. Any lawyer will tell you that you're not entitled to much. Plus, I added you wanted to evaluate whether the marriage was worth saving." "Well, I've completed my evaluation too." "It's not." Jessica started crying. "You can't do this to me. Where am I supposed to go? Maybe Tyler from the gym can help you figure that out. Or Brandon from the real estate office, or Derek from yoga class. You seem to have plenty of options lined up. Those guys were just friends." Jake laughed. "Friends don't tell married women. They want to show them what they've been missing. But hey, now you can find out if any of them want to support a woman with no job, no money, and a history of cheating on her husband." The beautiful irony was that Jessica had engineered her own downfall by demanding an evaluation period. She'd given me legal and moral justification to protect my assets by posting about it publicly. She had created evidence of her intent to leave the marriage by entertaining other men. She'd proved she was already checked out. "What happens now?" she asked through tears. "Now you get exactly what you've been advertising for. I said freedom to find someone who appreciates what you bring to the table. Unfortunately, what you bring to the table is entitlement, disloyalty, and expensive tastes with no ability to pay for them." Jake clapped me on the shoulder, and David gets his life back without a parasite draining his bank account and disrespecting his marriage. Jessica ran upstairs, probably to call Madison or one of her Instagram followers for sympathy, but Jake and I both knew the truth. She'd played herself, and now she was about to find out what her worth actually was on the open market. Saturday morning, I woke up to find Jessica in the kitchen surrounded by tissues, her laptop open, and her phone constantly buzzing. She looked like she'd been crying all night. "Rough night?" I asked, pouring coffee. "Nobody's responding to my messages," she said miserably. "Tyler, Brandon, Derek. None of them are answering." Jake walked in from the guest room. "Shocking. It's almost like guys who hit on married women aren't looking for serious relationships. They said they cared about me. They cared about the possibility of sleeping with you." Jake replied matter-of-factly, "Huge difference." Jessica's phone rang. She grabbed it desperately. "Mom? Oh, thank God you called me back." I could hear her mother's voice through the phone, shrill and demanding. Jessica put it on speaker, probably hoping for backup. "Jessica Marie, what is this nonsense I'm seeing on Instagram? Are you having marriage problems, Mom?" David's being completely unreasonable. He cut off my credit cards and now he's trying to kick me out of my own house. David, her mother yelled into the phone. What is wrong with you? You don't treat family like this. I took the phone. Hi, Mrs. Rodriguez. Jessica asked for a week to evaluate whether our marriage was worth saving. I'm simply giving her an accurate picture of what being single would look like. That's not what she meant. And you know it. Actually, that's exactly what she meant. She also meant it when she told multiple men that she was figuring out her next chapter and looking for new adventures. Silence on the other end. Jessica wouldn't do that, her mother said finally, but with less conviction. Jake leaned toward the phone. Ma'am, I have screenshots of everything. Your daughter has been emotionally cheating while demanding her husband prove his worth to her. Who is that Jake Martinez, David's friend? I've been documenting everything to help him protect his assets. You had someone spying on my daughter. I had someone saving public posts your daughter made while she was shopping for my friend's replacement. I corrected by Sunday afternoon. The full cavalry had arrived. Jessica's parents, her sister, and 2 of her cousins all crowded into my living room like some kind of intervention squad. This is ridiculous, Jessica's father started. You're both adults. Work it out like adults. I tried to work it out, I said. Jessica responded by giving me an ultimatum and flirting with other men on social media. She was just confused. Her sister defended. She's been feeling neglected. Jake, who'd been quietly recording everything on his phone, finally spoke up. Neglected. How David pays for everything. The house, the car, the insurance, the food, the clothes, the gym membership, the social activities. What exactly has she been neglected of emotional support? Jessica's cousin chimed in. What emotional support? Like when she posted about their marriage problems on Instagram instead of talking to her husband? That kind of emotional support. Jessica's mother turned on me. You're being cruel, David. She made a mistake. But marriage is about forgiveness. What mistake exactly? The ultimatum. The social media posts, the flirting with other men, the complete lack of contribution to our household, or the part where she told her friend she was trying to figure out what she settled for. The room went quiet. She said what her father asked. Jake pulled out his phone. Want to hear the recording, and Madison posted it before taking it down? That's illegal, Jessica's sister protested. Actually, it's not one-party consent state. And Madison was the one who recorded and posted it, Jake replied. But here's the best part. Want to see Jessica's DMs with the guys she's been talking to? No. Jessica screamed. You can't show them that. Why not? If it's innocent, what's the problem? Her family looked at each other, starting to realize there was more to the story than Jessica had told them. Her father, who I'd always respected, looked directly at me. David, what exactly did she say to these other men? I looked at Jessica. Want to tell them, or should Jake show them the screenshots? Jessica started crying again. It wasn't what it looked like. Tell us what it looked like, her father demanded through tears. Jessica admitted she'd been talking to a few guys, but insisted it was just conversation. When pressed for details, she finally admitted she'd been maybe a little flirty, but nothing physical happened. Her father's expression shifted completely. You gave your husband an ultimatum while you were flirting with other men. I was just confused. Confused about whether you wanted to be married, whether I was happy. Jake interjected. Ma'am, with respect, your daughter has been living rent-free with no job, unlimited spending money, and 0 responsibilities. If she's not happy with that arrangement, the problem isn't the marriage. Her mother tried one last defense. David, surely you can forgive this. She's young. She made a mistake. She's 28 years old, I replied. And this wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated attempt to see if she could do better while keeping me as a backup plan. That's not true, Jessica protested. Really? Then explain why you gave me an ultimatum instead of asking for marriage counseling. Explain why you were entertaining other men instead of working on our relationship. Explain why you were posting about new chapters instead of trying to save our current chapter. She couldn't explain any of it because the truth was obvious to everyone in the room. Her father stood up. Jessica, get your things. You're coming home with us, Daddy. No. This is my house. This is David's house that he's been letting you live in. You've embarrassed our family and destroyed your marriage through your own actions. As they were leaving, Jessica's mother pulled me aside. David, I hope you'll reconsider. She really does love you, ma'am, with respect. Someone who loves you doesn't put you on probation while shopping for your replacement. She loves what I provide, not who I am. Jake handed her my lawyer's business card. When Jessica's ready to discuss divorce terms, she can call him after they left. Jake and I sat in my suddenly peaceful house. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said for the first time in years. Free. 3 months later, I was living my best life. Jake and I had taken that guys' trip to Costa Rica we'd been planning for years. I'd been promoted to regional construction director with a $45,000 raise. I'd started dating a woman named Sarah who worked in cybersecurity, had her own apartment, paid her own bills, and thought ultimatums were for children. Then Jessica started calling. It started with just wanting to talk calls that I sent straight to voicemail. Then the calls started. At first it was just a ring or two a day. "Can we talk voicemails?" I ignored. Then came texts, "I miss us. I've made a mistake." I didn't reply. A week later, it was emails from a new address, lengthy apologies, blame-shifting promises to change. I forwarded them all to my lawyer. Jake and I laughed she was digging her own grave. 30 days after Operation Reality Check went live, I pulled into the driveway to find a FedEx envelope taped to the door. Inside the draft divorce petition sight unseen, already notarized. They'd caught on. No surprise there. I called her back for the first time and left a voicemail. "Jess, I got your papers. I'm sorry it got this far. I appreciate you finally making a decision. I've moved half our stuff into storage. Let me know when you want your share of the houseplants. All the best, David." That was it. No dramatic confrontation, no last-minute tears. The next morning, the ring was gone from the jewelry box. I sold it online, gave her a chunk of cash to close her chapter. She never called again. By mid-November, the house felt like mine again. Jake visited with a six-pack and a celebratory steak dinner. We toasted to freedom. I started dating Sarah, my friend from the cybersecurity conference Independent Funny. Never once asked for a Ferrari or an ultimatum. We took our first weekend trip without checking bank balances or drafting presentations. At work, I got promoted to regional director, 30% more pay. No wife drama included. I learned that ultimatums aren't just for other people. Sometimes you have to use them on yourself to protect what matters. A few months later, I logged into Instagram out of curiosity. Jessica's account was deactivated. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and scrolled right on by. TLDR. Jessica gave me a week to decide on our marriage, then flirted nonstop with other men and posted about new chapters online. I cut her off, financially documented everything with my best friend Jake, and turned her ultimatum back on her. She realized she'd overplayed her hand, filed for divorce first, and I happily moved on. New promotion, new relationship, and zero regrets.